All right, we're live.
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back. Guess we'll give everyone just a minute to come in here. Still waiting on a few people. I don't think we have any.
You want to wish everyone a happy
Oh
4th?
yeah. Go ahead.
Happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day, especially to all of our military and veterans.
Yeah,
We wouldn't be here without them.
that's right.
So appreciate y'all.
So this is going to be probably a little bit shorter than what we've done in the past for our live chats. I don't think we try to keep them under an hour, but somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour. So this one might be just a somewhere closer to 30-minute side on that. But anyways, yeah, it's a holiday weekend, and we've got chicken processing to do today. So
how many are we doing?
30.
30? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about that article from the Daily Wire with the gas prices. And this is really interesting because what it's talking about, and actually here, let me pull up the article on the computer. But what it's talking about is the Russian gas price, right? So Russia right now exporting with the amount that they're exporting, they're talking about with all the sanctions and everything coming into play, that the gas prices could more than triple for the price of a barrel of oil. So bear with me here 1 minute. Let me pull this up. Where's that at?
We had one about them demanding the rubles.
Yeah, I know that's the wrong one. We're doing a video on that.
Okay.
Oh crap, I can't find that article. Okay, you look for that. Why? I'll talk about it. Oh, it's from the Daily Wire, so it's the Daily Wire one. So, anyways, the gas prices. What the Daily Wire was talking about is that as Russia has more and more problems with the gas prices and the sanctions, right? So we're sanctioning them, and then Russia could simply say, "Hey, we're not playing the game anymore," because what they're talking about is we're talking about putting a cap on the prices and only allowing like the G7 nations in there. And telling Russia basically you can't export your gas to anyone else, and we're going to put a cap on the price. Well, why in the hell is he's not going to be inclined to play that game? It's a really, really foolish move, I think, because I don't think he particularly wants to play these games anymore. And so to talk about putting sanctions on him and putting price caps on him effectively, there's a couple options that he could do. He could simply say, okay, at this point in time, I'm done playing these games and raise the prices on it. Or I'm going to sell to these third world nations. And so there was estimates on the gas prices that they could go anywhere between $250 and $380 a barrel. So if you don't know right now, the barrel of crude oil is roughly $110, and fluctuating a little bit from there. And so at $110 going to $380, right, we've more than tripled the price of the raw material, right? So this isn't even talking about the production price of everything later on. This is the price of the raw material. So and we can see that it's not a direct equation as far as if the price of the raw material doubles, the price of gas doesn't necessarily double. It can go, it could triple, or it could just be 1.5 times. So there's different numbers on that, but the bottom line is that that could potentially make us see gas prices somewhere in the neighborhood of $15, $20 a gallon. If that were to happen, that would be pretty catastrophic to our economy.
So J.P. Morgan, is that what you were talking
about? That's
where
it was. Yep.
There we go.
So, but the gas prices could become so astronomical that, I mean, think about $20 a gallon. You couldn't hardly even afford to drive to work. It'd be cheaper to stay home and not make any money.
And then what about the farmers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on. Let me walk through this here. Price of a gallon of gas in America now topping $5 in many areas. Such a dramatic increase in oil costs would be blah blah blah. If Russia decides to cut its output, so that's what it's actually, it was Daily Wire that reported on it, but it's from J.P. Morgan. So the West is putting the squeeze on Moscow over its war in Ukraine, but Russia, which supplies much of Europe with oil for heating and gasoline, could easily flip the script by cutting the output. Cutting production by 3 million barrels a day would push global prices to $190 a barrel, and worst case scenario of $5 million per day cut would send the price of a single barrel to $380 a barrel, because we'd be having to source it from other people and other countries. And what's really frustrating is that, or not us, but then they're going to put demand on these other countries, and then it forces us to also to also look at other countries. And so what's really, really frustrating about this is that we can produce enough of our own oil here without having to rely on other countries. And so it's very, very...
We could be energy independent if we wanted to be.
We were. It wasn't that long ago.
Not that long ago.
So this is something to keep an eye on, and to keep an eye on how they're going to do this, because it is very... let me find this next article, the Breitbart one. It is very scary as far as what could push forward, and that there is some possibility. And even if the worst case scenarios aren't hit, let's just say we hit $150 or $200 a barrel, that is going to drastically increase the price of the what you're paying at the pump. And I don't know about y'all, but we're already feeling a little bit strapped.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay, so I guess
I think Pete was saying Happy Independence Day. Yes.
Yeah, Happy Independence Day, Pete.
Yes,
yeah.
Keep your tanks topped off for sure.
Yeah, we need to have our diesel tank topped off too, Pete. $6.50 a gallon. We're still cheaper, about $1 cheaper per gallon than that. But...
And Pete's out in California, so we're in Alabama. Right. So yeah.
Yesterday at the pump, they would only let you pay $300 at a time. Oh my gosh.
My goodness.
Yeah. They can't really do like this. The old one where it's like $75 limit on it. They can't hardly do that anymore. Like, where are you going to pump 3?
I'm just moving to pump 3 to keep filling up. Yes.
Okay. So now this article, the next one I want to talk to you guys about is we know the gas prices are going to continue, and so that's
energy.
We don't need to necessarily beat that to death. This is just one possible scenario. So really, what I want to talk about is kind of more pragmatic things. So well, I shouldn't say that that's not pragmatic, but I guess more
what we can do to kind of help offset.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So Breitbart.com did an article the other day that's talking. This is from the German government, but that the wood stoves are getting harder and harder to come by. The manufacturers in certain models are booked out more than a year, in which case you're not going to be able to get them in their houses. As people started seeing the price of crude oil and the price of natural gas going up, a lot of people decided to buy wood stoves and get them installed in their house. We love ours. And I can't imagine heating any other way now. But
you never see them down south.
No,
you don't. Very rarely.
Everybody uses electric heat down here. So, anyways, the wood stoves are getting harder and harder to come by. And one of the things that they talked about too was parts. So if you have a wood stove in your house, make sure you get your parts. We're actually, after we read it, we're like, oh, okay, we got to go order a new rope for the door seals, the gasket seal around the glass, and probably going to get a spare piece of glass cut and just have it on standby. So, but definitely having those spare parts for it now is not only beneficial, it's going to be an absolute necessity. Realize that if you have things like a catalytic converter in there, you may have some more parts. Ours does not have it, so it doesn't make it quite as efficient, but
less to maintain.
Yeah, but it is certainly less to maintain. But you definitely need to be looking at stocking up on the spare parts. But if you have not considered a wood stove now and you're looking at it here in the U.S., now would be a really good time to get it before we get any type of mad rush. Because hey, Mary. So if the wood stoves, if they're having shortages overseas, if they're not already having shortages here, it's only a matter of time before they do. We will start to see those increases here. And we may start to see them down south as electricity prices increase. People might start looking at other means of heating their house when it just becomes too expensive to heat. But down here, people generally are more concerned with AC rather than the heat, and so that's and you just deal with it.
Yeah.
you deal with the electric bill, whatever it is, because you're going to cool your house down. But the bottom line here is that if y'all have not considered putting something in or getting spare parts for yours, now would be a great time to do it. Even if you have mild winters, your winters are still cold enough to certainly kill you or to do some damage to you, right? So you don't want to be without heat. And the prices of crude oil, the prices of natural gas, and propane, liquid propane, that is all those prices are just getting astronomical. And so finding a way that you can do it yourself. And there's lots of land that you can go logging on for free, and so it just takes time and the dedication to do it. Obviously,
and equipment and know-how. It's dangerous to log.
It is, but if you're going on public land, I mean, you really don't need that much equipment. You need a chainsaw and obviously the associated components that go with that. So your fuel, your oil, wedges and stuff like that. But you really need a chainsaw and a truck and a trailer, or a truck or a trailer, one of the two. Hey, Billy, good to see you. Yeah, happy Independence Day. So, anyways, the wood stove for us has been a real lifesaver. We don't pay for heat in the wintertime. We use that. Ours is at the center of our house. Luckily, because we're in the South, we have lots of oak around here, and so we can burn oak all winter long. But for those of you that specifically like you're in like Colorado or something, you've got what pine and what the athens, and just kind of junk wood to burn. You got to go down south and log a little bit, but anyways, it's a pretty minimal amount of equipment, and if you don't have that equipment, you can always pay to get those logs delivered. Although that does kind of, in my opinion, defeat the purpose because it's not that much cheaper than paying gas. So it's like, okay, well, but certainly gives you the option of being able to cut your own. And so I think to me, it's incredibly beneficial. We keep at our place here about 2 years of wood on hand at any given time, 2 years of dry cured wood on hand at any given time. And that way we can get through 2 winters. So we always figured if I broke my leg or something like that and I needed to take a winter off, we would be able to catch up the next year. So that's generally how we run it. But so if you're thinking about it or want one, get it ordered now.
Your wood stove.
Okay. So planting and food shortages. Hey, Ben, cutting lawn and listening in. Oh, yeah.
What is this? Colnay? We didn't say hi. Hey. He was here at the very beginning.
I can't tell what those are. Can you see what that is?
Greg Bell.
It's
I don't
like
know,
little
salt pepper shakers?
I can't tell what that is.
I can't tell.
Right?
I'm sorry.
Can't tell what the emojis are on there. Okay.
Nope.
So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is this is one I want to go a little bit more in depth on, and is going to be exacerbating the food shortages. So we've talked in the past, and we've talked in all of our videos and in our live chats what I think is going to happen with food shortages. So if you're new to this or new to the channel, let me just explain that next year's food prices will reflect this year's harvest, the same way that this year's food prices reflect last year's harvest. So we're paying last year's harvest prices with this year's inflation and this year's shipping prices. And that's what's causing our food to go down, and packaging prices, I should say that too. Packaging is one of the bigger expenses and uses a lot of petroleum. But next year's food prices will be compounded because they're going to add this year's prices of the harvest, which is grossly more expensive when fertilizer is up 200% and 300%. If you can get it, if you can't get it, the production goes down, which means there's going to be more demand on it, which is also going to drive the prices up. And so that Cal Nay, or however you say your name there, as far as that, we'll get to that here in just a second. I'll touch back on that one. But anyways, lost my train of thought. Food prices. So food prices are reflective of the current year's kind of situation and then the last year's harvest. So realize that in next year's situation, if it's not better, I doubt it's going to be better. It's probably going to be worse, or at the best, it would be the same and be similar. I think we're going to see increased prices on fuel, which is going to cost us shipping and everything, packaging to go up. But right now we're having shortages, and the manure shortages are getting to be a big one. So in the U.S., we're not allowed to use what do we call it, bio something, I can't remember. It's a human excrement. We're not allowed to use that here in the U.S. In the UK and in the EU, they're allowed to use that. They have been since like 1986. Real common when I was in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, they just dump it on the fields. My assumption is in the EU, it's more regulated and that they make them composted or something. But it doesn't seem quite as gross. But human excrement is a way to get nitrogen into your soil. And what they're finding is even with that, there's a massive shortage. There's massive shortage on sewage plants that export tons and tons and tons of this, and the farmers aren't able to get it. So,
have you read there's massive droughts in Texas right now? That's severely impacting the crops too. Yeah.
Well, and we've talked about the droughts a number of times on here because we know Lake Mead is incredibly low, and so the droughts are going to continue to impact this year. There's just no way for the food prices to go down next year, but the nitrogen is going to cause us to have issues with food scarcity, which is also going to drive up the prices. So next year it's going to be an issue of not only can you get it, but is it going to be affordable? I mean, you can look at a chocolate cake in the window all day long, but if it's $300 for a chocolate cake, it's not affordable.
Right. That's your birthday present.
That's it. And that's it. You got a chocolate cake.
Yeah.
and then the thing to remember is that grains are vastly important. People don't realize this because they say, well, I only eat corn on the cob in the summertime, and I can deal with canned corn, and it's like it's very short-sighted. And what the grains are for is, if we think about it as a net calorie, right? So because there's a lot of things that we use grains for, and people don't realize it. But your grits are corn. So here in the South, we eat a lot of grits, and grits are corn.
Yeah,
it's just ground corn. And anyways, but the bigger thing is your beef, your pork, and your chicken, and even just the eggs that you get from the store. All that is produced using grain, and that's a primary feed supplement in there. So it's all very interconnected. And so the grain prices and the wheat prices, those are in corn prices. Those are going to be very catastrophic, I think, next year. So now is definitely the time to be looking at stocking up. If you've got room at your place for 55-gallon barrels of wheat berries and corn and stuff like that, that would be a very beneficial idea. But as well as making sure that you're getting on the list, getting a freezer full of beef, so that you can make it through those times. Because I think the fact is,
we have a waiting list too, actually, of people wanting beef, and we just don't have enough.
Yeah, we do have pork.
So,
but
we still have pork.
We have a lot of people. Yeah, we won't have beef at least until next year. Mm-hmm. But we may not even have enough for next year. Maybe. Yeah. So we've got a waiting list right now for beef. Mm-hmm. And our pork is, again, our pork is we still have some openings there, but we're even running out of that. Yeah. We don't have many left. So, and we're not even advertising it because we just don't need to.
Word of mouth right now.
We just simply don't need to. But anyways, the manure shortages is what people are trying to offset the nitrogen and the urea shortages about. So, that's why there's this big demand on manure. You used to be able to get manure for free. Now you have to pay for it. We used to go to the stables here, and we could go get load after load, and they'd give us as much as we wanted.
They beg us to come back, take more. Not anymore.
Yeah, now we can't. You can call them and hope they have some.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I wanted to answer. He had a question. What's your opinion on storing gasoline with stable? Okay, so rules for gasoline and rules for diesel are a little bit different. So diesel stores for longer than gasoline does, and diesel doesn't get as many additives in it to store long. Diesel gets basically gets a bacteria in it that eats. It's kind of like a SCOBY for ferment and for kombucha. It basically makes like a little bacteria in there that kind of degrades the quality of it. So if you're going to store diesel, you need to put a biocide in it. And then I like putting the fuel additives in there. There's some people that say that they're snake juice, and there's some evidence for it. If you look at Project Farm on YouTube, he's got kind of real world studies on it and does a lot of data points on there. So that's really interesting. As far as storing gasoline stable, I store gasoline longer than anybody ever says that you're supposed to, and we really don't have any problems with it. We only store good quality gasoline without ethanol in it. So, I don't have really any experience storing anything else, but we store good quality gasoline with no ethanol in it and put stable in it. If you really wanted to say, hey, this is my emergency reserve of gasoline storage, you wanted to go store 200 gallons or whatever, just to have it as a reserve as an emergency, then at that point in time, what you'd actually be looking at is I would go get like avgas from the airport. If you have a local airport, one of the smaller airports, that'll supply you, and go get something like the 100 low lead, because it will not break down near as fast, and even if it does, it'll still have plenty of juice to run your vehicles on, because you'll still have a higher octane rating. And so stuff like that, and there's not going to be any difference in the run in a modern vehicle. Older vehicles with carburetors, you'd have to readjust it for the octane, but modern vehicles with fuel injection, it's not going to make any difference on it. But anyways, adding stable certainly does increase the life. But we probably store our gasoline. We rotate through it and use it, but the longest it's on the shelf is probably about a year. And I don't add stable anymore. We used to, but we just don't anymore. I just buy good quality gas, non-ethanol gas, and store it. And I store it in good containers that are airtight, that are sealed. And the ones actually that I stored in don't even have a breather valve on them. They're old military ones, but I store it in those, and I don't worry about it. It's gasoline is running in chainsaws, it's running in dirty equipment, but really we just don't have any problems with it. So take that for what it's worth. And as far as the diesel, I'm a little bit more picky about the additives in the diesel, because that's in the truck and the tractor, which are two pieces of equipment. We just can't have the risk on them. Do I think it's necessarily needed? No, not really good filtration on it, because we pump it out of our tank and it goes through 2 filters in there. There's a fuel water filter and separator, and then there's a secondary 2-micron filter. And then even in my tank, there's an inline filter that it goes through, and then it goes through the factory fuel filter and then into the injector. So it gets filtered 4 times before it ever goes into the injector. So it's not really a huge concern, but certainly is something that it's just so unforgiving that we don't risk it.
Yeah.
So take that for what it's worth. Yeah. Let's see. Let's catch up with some comments here. Okay, how about how long would it last? Non-ethanol was stable. So again, if it's non-ethanol, I've had it 6 months to a year, and I've stored some for 18 months with stable, and I've run it, and I've never had a problem with that. My general rule with running older gas like that is I try to mix it with newer, fresher gas. So if I'm going to cycle it out and I'm just keeping it as an emergency supply, and you're cycling it out, then you fill your tank. Put some in your tank in your car when your car's at half full, and then it'll mix with a lot of the better fuel in there, and I think you're a lot less likely to have any problems with it. As a general rule, gasoline will not hurt an engine if it gets kind of older and gummy, especially if you mix it and get it a little bit rejuvenated. Thank you for the super chat. But anyways, it's so as a general rule, it's okay. Obviously, there's exceptions to that. If you let it really, really get broken down over time, then you would want to put it in. But if you're going to add it with other fuels and stuff, you can really wear out the length on it. My advice is really to use it as a rotating stockpile. That's what we do, where we have 30 to 50 gallons on hand at any given time. We rotate that through between the chainsaw, the lawnmowers, the weed eaters, and if we really get something on the shelf for a while, we'll say, all right, let's just fill it up in the car and go top them off. And we do that periodically. We have enough power outages here that the generator, it gets used a decent amount, and that runs to about 5 gallons every 8 hours every day. Every 5 gallons, every full day. But anyway, so I would personally search for the non-ethanol.
Ooh, I haven't noticed the labels, but I haven't been looking either. So I'll have to look for that. I have seen some. I did that labels popping up more.
Okay, so Billy, as far as the contains 10% labels being removed, that's because I think because the ethanol has been officially increased, right? And so it now contains up to 15%. So they can't say contains up to 10% when now it contains up to 15%. So my assumption is that they're probably going to get new labels on there that says contains up to 15%. Then those blue drums, we use them to death. And if you're going to use the blue drums to store your own food in 55-gallon drums, make sure and line them with a Mylar bag. A lot of those are not food grade. And we just, I don't know, Mylar bags are so cheap that we just line them with the Mylar bag.
Just to be safe.
And the Mylar bags have a better rating as far as how long they keep the food preserved and fresh for. So that's what we use. But for your cat and your dog, different story. They're okay. But all right, so let's see. Chevron, Pete said, Chevron around us has switched all number 2 pumps to B20. We no longer go there. So actually, Pete, so this is really interesting. People talk about this with the biodiesel, and I really like running biodiesel on my truck. Biodiesel actually has a better lubricant in it because of the fats that it uses to create the biodiesel. And it's a little bit dirtier fuel, so you want to make sure you're changing out your fuel filter more regularly. And you do get less power on it, so if you're towing real heavy, then it's not necessarily the best time to do it if you're really pushing the bounds of your vehicle. But I like the biodiesel in the truck because of the added lubricity that you get in the fuel. It's supposedly better for your engines. And so to me, it's worth it to put a little bit of biodiesel through there. And I don't mind, again, having an older diesel, I don't mind running biodiesel through it. If you have a newer diesel, you'll have probably more problems with it. But I don't know enough about the emission stuff to speak intelligently on that. With the EPA being castrated, can you delete diesels legally now so you don't need to? Oh, Greg. Okay, so here's the deal. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, they were. If y'all don't know, the EPA got castrated in a Supreme Court decision. Basically, they said that the EPA is no longer allowed to basically legislate on their own whims. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this carries over into other federal government agencies, like the ATF would be a really good one to get control of. But the EPA, you still cannot delete a diesel legally. And really, what the problem that you're running into now is actually finding guys that make the equipment to delete the diesels, simply because the equipment they got like what was it, Powerflex diesel or something like that, whatever it was. They got like a massive $1.3 million fine for making these kits, and they were saying it's only for off-road use only. And the EPA said, "Yeah, we don't care. We're still fining you." And they countersued and they lost, actually, which they shouldn't have. But because they were making it for off-road use, and so it doesn't, you as the end user using it how you want, it doesn't seem fair to punish the company. But anyways, yeah,
how recent was that?
Oh, that was
under this administration.
No, that was back. That was either during Trump or before Trump.
Okay.
But yeah, can you delete them legally? No, I don't think so at this point in time. We'll see how that gets challenged and moves forward in the future. But I don't think anybody's going to push the DEF stuff until we start seeing real DEF shortages causing shipping issues. At that point in time, I think the general public, you'll start seeing them start getting a little bit more knowledgeable about it, and they'll start saying, "Listen, hey, you can fix this, and you can make it so where we can ship, and we need y'all to fix this, or we're going to vote you out." And it will eventually. It takes a while, but it will eventually get some control on it if that happens. If they are able to keep up with the DEF production to where it doesn't affect the shipping. Yeah, as long as it doesn't get so high that people can't afford it, then nobody's going to complain about it. That's the reality of it. The only people that'll know what's going on are the truckers, because most people just don't know, and that's what you run into with it. They don't know, they can't vote on it, regardless of whether they're voting with their at the voting booths or with their money. Okay. Oh, bless you too. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it. Okay. We have 2 trucks with the DEF. All the equipment is pre-DEF. Yeah, the DEF is just a nightmare. We made so many more things harder than what it needed to be. Let's see. We're going to look into it more things. 7.6-liter motors. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So I think we caught up on our questions. So we talked about the manure shortage. Okay. The CO2 shortage. So this is really interesting, guys. So there is a CO2 shortage. And this was in New Zealand, right? New Zealand. But they were talking about how it's going to affect the European Union, and specifically the British. I guess because they're, they export it in some way.
New Zealand's supposed to export it.
But what's interesting about this is if y'all are like me, if you're like, okay, CO2, okay, you can't have a freaking Coke, like get over it, no big deal. That we got bigger problems, right? But the thing to remember is that CO2 is used in packaging and in preserving of like store-bought meats and stuff. So they use it to drive oxygen out of the containers when they store them, so that way it's a completely oxygen-free zone. And they like your canned hams and stuff like that. It's a lot of the long-term preservation is done with CO2 to drive that out. And it's actually a way that you can preserve your own. So if you take like a 5-gallon bucket and you put a piece of dry ice at the bottom, and then you put your grains on top of it, what you actually do is you set the lid off to it, and you just leave just a little crack, and then you'll light a match, and you hold the match over it. Once the match extinguishes, then there's no oxygen coming out. It's all carbon dioxide, and you seal it. And if you do that, you'll actually create such a vacuum in there. If you do it right, you'll actually get your bucket to buckle in a little bit on the side, because it gets so much of a vacuum in there. Obviously, the goal is not to do that, because you don't want to damage your bucket. You want to use them, but if you do it really well, you'll cave them in a little bit on the side. But anyway, so CO2 is very, very popular in preservation and driving out oxygen, and so that's why we want to.
That's why this is worried about it, because of the food shortages also.
Yes.
So that's kind of how they're related.
Well, and I think with the food shortage coming, anybody that has brains is trying to get food stocked up right now. I just don't understand how you can look at this. And we all have people in our families that think that we're all crazy. I'm sure y'all do too. And it's like, listen, you know that these problems are happening, but you're not willing to buy some food to stop it. That just to me seems a little absurd. But anyway, so the CO2 shortage is going to probably not be. It's probably going to be a little bit more of a nothing burger from a final output on it, because what I think is most likely to happen is that you're just going to see some higher prices at these foods. So again, hams and tunas and stuff like that, where it's used to drive the oxygen out. I think you're just likely to see a slight increase in the price rather than noticing much difference other than that. So it'll be a little bit of a nothing burger as far as that goes. Okay.
Oh, this last one.
Hang on. Let's
Catch up on notes.
catch up on make sure. Tiny
Yeah.
ticks.
Yes, tick season.
Okay, so Billy asked about thinking of buying a new portable generator. Any recommendations from personal experience? Okay, so we actually really like our Champion generator that we just got a Tractor Supply Champion one. I know they're made in China, but they're $1,000 for a 9,500 watt generator that has lasted us regularly used for 3 years,
Several
4 years.
now, yeah. Well, they were $1,000 back when we bought it.
Yeah, I think it was
Don't know
$1,000
what
back
they're
when we
now,
bought it. I
but-
don't know what it is now, but anyway, we've been really happy with it. I know it's not the highest quality engine. It's not as high quality as buying a Honda one. It's also half the price, and so it's like, all right, if I get 10 years of use out of this one, maybe I'll have a whole house generator by then or something. I really like the Honda portable ones, those little the little inverter generators. Those are really good quality generators. You can daisy chain them together. So if you're not looking at running your whole house, if you need one more for practical use like farming or camping, then those are great. The bigger ones, the 9,500 watt ones, they're really only good if you're running like a construction site, or we keep ours on a trickle charger in the garage, and then we lose power, we plug it in. Eventually, we'll probably buy another small one that we can use for farm work, because it's just too big to crank that thing out every time you got farm projects.
Yeah.
And you can't even hardly lift it by yourself. Like I would there be.
No, I can't move it.
Well, yeah,
by
you can't
myself,
move it.
no.
Well, you can move it with the wheels, I think, but I
But
certainly
not-
couldn't. I certainly couldn't get it picked up into the back of the truck.
Yeah.
Anytime I've had to do that, I put a chain around it and lift it up with the tractor. So, but so we've been happy with that. I guess it really depends on what you want to do with it. If you just want a small generator to run a fridge and a freezer and be able to take camping and stuff like that, I'd look at one of those Honda inverter generators. They work pretty well and they have a good reputation. But if you wanted something that you can plug into your house and run your whole house, man, I'd look at that Champion one all day long. We've been really happy with it. And again, I know it's a lower quality generator, but they work. And I've heard really good things about the Predator ones, which is a Harbor Freight brand. And you think, man, Harbor Freight, you don't ever buy stuff like that from Harbor Freight because you know it's not going to last. But really, the people that use them, we've got customers of ours and clients that use them, and I see them in houses all the time, and everybody seems really happy with them. So they're a lot cheaper than what some of the bigger ones are, some of the bigger name brands, because anything like that's going to be half of what a Honda is. Let's see. A couple of months ago, Chase said oil was going to $185, now $380. No one will be driving. I think that's what they want.
That's what they
want.
want.
I think John, you're definitely on the right track. Yeah. I still think we're probably going to see oil in that $185 barrel. I think 380 is far fetched. I don't see that one happening. I think there's too many weird things that would have to take place in order for that to happen. But yeah, $185 a barrel oil. That one is.
Well, the White House is preparing for $200.
Yeah, because they're not going to change anything. The White House doesn't care how much we're paying at the pump. They keep telling us that it's our moral duty, right, to pay the prices of the pump to help Ukraine. Well, it doesn't have as much to do with Ukraine as it does with bad drilling policies here stateside. So, anyways, yeah, I agree with you there.
John, you're not crazy. Keep storing up your food. They'll be coming for you later, asking for extra.
Yeah, Pete. So yeah, definitely solar is going to take a little bit of time, but so Pete says you got a 6,500 watt on gas and a 5,500 diesel generator. We would love a diesel generator here. That's one of the things that we're probably going to do. We're probably not ever going to do a whole house generator. We'll probably do a portable generator that's on a diesel, and that way we can use our fuel tank here in our storage. Let's see. So Ben said Generac home generators are awesome. Power goes out, it kicks on. Cheapest one is like $7,000. They are worth it when power is out. Yeah. Generac makes great stuff, and yeah, the whole house ones are great. We buy mobile ones just because we use it for so much farm chores. But eventually, what I'd rather have a permanent mount diesel one with just a small inverter generator. But that's just getting up there and toss. Yeah, Pete, I think 185 to 225 a barrel is much more realistic. I think that's probably a more practical number.
Yes, Mary,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
They want us to drive electric. The grid can't sustain it. I saw an analysis by an engineer the other day, and he figured nationwide the grid can support about 3 electric vehicles per 10 houses. So that's not 2 vehicles per house, which is what the average is, right? The average is 2.2 vehicles per house, something like that. So it's not even 2 vehicles per house. That's 1 vehicle per house, and the grid can only support
3 houses.
Three houses. So this is astronomical. What they're trying to do with the grid and the power and the electric vehicles. Ben, I think you're right. I think we're likely to see a pretty massive collapse before we would get to 380 or 350 a barrel. I think our currency would have to be substantially devalued before we could get to that point. Okay, let's talk about our last thing here. So, beer from recycled sewage. Right.
Singapore.
You want to talk about that one?
Oh, well, yes. So, people are worried about fresh, clean drinking water. And so different places are trying to come up with ways of converting human waste into drinking water. So Singapore has a beer that has come out from recycled sewage. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I guess what they're doing is they're trying to make sewage water potable again.
Yeah,
they're trying different purification methods to try to make it potable again.
They're trying to do that in LA. I believe someplace in England.
Yeah, and it's as gross as it is, it's a doable thing. It's a difficult thing to do on scale and do it large scale. It's the same thing with like desalination and stuff like that. It's doable. The shipping fleets and the aircraft carriers, they do it all the time. But it's a very difficult thing to do at scale, and that's the problem that you run into with it when you're trying to do a large population.
The statistics, I understand why they're trying to do it, because supposedly 2.7 billion people worldwide have water shortages for at least a month. So I understand the concept behind it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely important in figuring out the water and figuring out the droughts, but our farming practices have a lot more to do with that. We're doing the same farming practices that caused the Dust Bowl. Joe Solenson talked about this, is that if we were actually doing farming practices and doing rotational grazing and stuff, New Mexico would look like an oasis instead of a desert. And it's because you're actually allowing the soil to utilize the water that's there. It's not what's important is not the amount of rainfall. What's important is the utilization of the rainfall that you get, and that matters more. But from a drinking water standpoint, we're going to constantly have problems until we can get control of that. And I think in the future, as things become more and more expensive, you're going to start seeing things that we would only see in third world countries that we think we're above and that are kind of gross to us. But when I was in Afghanistan, they used to go to the bigger military bases, and bigger military bases would have these large septic systems. And the local nationals would come in there and they would pump the septic out of them. That was their job, and they got paid to pump the septic out of them. Well, they loved it because they got paid to pump the septic out, and then they drive it right over to a farmer and sell it to a farmer. And all they do is they wouldn't compost it at all. They just pull the thing on the back and let it flood throughout the field. It's pretty nasty. But I think you're going to start seeing more stuff like that. And currently in the U.S., we can't do that. We're not allowed to use that for commercial farming. But I think you're likely to see that potentially change in the future. And really, it's just a matter of people getting over their squeamish factor of it, which, don't get me wrong, bothers me.
I know. And they've been selling this beer since April this year. So. But
I think you're likely to start seeing, it's that like that meme on Facebook that says that y'all are about to find out why grandma used to wash the tinfoil, and it's kind of like that we're going to start seeing people making more use of the resources. Instead of buying chicken broth, we're making bone stock. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're going to start seeing more and more.
Ben, you're right. It is a very crappy situation.
That's a crappy. It is good. So, like I said, guys, at the beginning, I knew this was going to be a little bit shorter live broadcast, so that was all we had in our notes that we wanted to talk to you guys about. Really, I think the most important thing is that going forward, you got to get some savvy about you, and I think figure out how to make do with a little bit less, and start working on that now. Start getting your food stores up if you don't have them. And again, we've always talked about this. We are not preppers. We're not talking about 30 years worth of food for 20 people. Oh, thank you. I am not your kind. His name's Billy. That's what I said.
Thanks,
He emailed
Billy.
me the other day. It's like I remember
And we
his
have been
name,
getting
but
some emails, and we're not always super fast at responding, but we will eventually.
yeah, we stay so
so
busy. It's really hard for us to respond. But yeah, if
But
y'all
we
want to reach
appreciate
us, the
them.
easiest way to reach us is always by email.
Yeah.
IronsideRanchLLC@gmail.com. You can always
Yeah.
reach us there. But if you guys have pictures, things going on around you that you think that you're okay with us using, send them to us. They make great thumbnails, if nothing else. But I like to use them in the videos when I have the time to edit the videos. A lot of times we get so caught up doing work that I just go out with the cows and film it real quick, and I chop off the beginning and the end, and we post it.
And I'm trying to research to send him articles. So if you have good articles, send them, and I'll scroll through them too.
Yeah.
So,
But anyway, so like y'all need to be looking at making sure that you have some food stored up, and then you got to get through this and start working on that year worth of food storage now. It's going to be ever more important as we continue to move forward. I think if nothing else, if you're just going to beat some of this inflation and get ahead of it, and hopefully with some changes in administration and government policy, we can start getting the prices back down in a few years.
But it's still a few years.
It's still a few years.
Yeah.
I don't think that, again, we talked about this. I don't think 2022 you're going to see prices dropping down. I think it's going to take the 2024 election because the president's office, the executive branch, has much more authority on that stuff than Congress does, and so he can affect the price of gas and the price of food a lot more directly than Congress can. So
yeah, and happy 4th to everyone. We're getting lots of good comments on that, and
yeah. So
yeah.
why Grandma always had such a beautiful garden. It was growing over the septic field.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you always find us. We do property inspections, and you find the septic field. It's where the grass is the absolute greenest. You'll have nice lush green grass, and then you'll have brown spots everywhere else. Like, all right, there's really a field.
Hey, Greg, welcome.
So
Canada, cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Greg.
that's neat.
Got a Canadian, eh?
Yeah.
So yeah, we appreciate y'all watching. It's interesting, Greg. Just seeing from down here, from our perspective on the news, on what's going on up there with your prime minister, and so it's been interesting to follow y'all and see what the trucker stuff where they started hijacking your truckers and taking their cryptocurrency.
Yeah, we secured our crypto.
Yeah.
After that, we're like, oh.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. We had been. It's one of those things that we had been meaning to do anyways.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we saw that, and the Canadian government was like taking people's crypto, we're like, all right,
okay. They've just been warning us to do this. Let's just do that.
So we got hard off the exchange and put it in the ledger, But anyways, so we will let y'all go. Have a wonderful 4th, guys. We really appreciate y'all watching. Love doing these live chats and getting everybody in here. Make sure, guys, it really helps us out when you like, share, subscribe, especially. But when you share these videos, if you share them there are a ton of communities on Facebook where it's like-minded people like us. And it really does help us out when you guys find, and you don't have to share all of them. I know not every video is great quality. I know we have some that were like, oh, we shouldn't have posted that one. But when we have our better ones, guys, sharing those out, that really helps us out and helps get the word out and helps grow the channel. So I can't thank you guys enough. But other than that, you guys have a great 4th, and we'll talk to y'all later.